The Galactic Dominion's fleets gathered at the edge of human space. Thousands of ships, each bristling with weapons far stronger than anything the human colonies possessed, formed a wall of steel and fire. The warlord stared at the holographic display, claws gripping the command console. He believed victory was assured. Humanity had been weakened, their colonies scattered, their fleets diminished. Yet a name haunted him, more persistent than any tactical report or intelligence file: Captain Elias Kane. The old human remained in chains aboard the flagship, seemingly powerless. Yet his words had already reached the hearts of humans scattered across the stars. Every whispered story of his defiance, every tale of his calm in the face of the Dominion's laughter, had grown into a wildfire of courage. The human strike, on the frontier world of Virel, Mara's fleet readied their small ships. They were few, many patched together with scavenged parts, but determination burned in every crew member. "We strike tonight," Mara said. "We have waited too long. The Dominion believes us defeated. They have underestimated us. Remember the old captain? He fights still, even in chains. So will we." Engines roared to life, and human ships moved silently through asteroid fields and gas clouds, avoiding Dominion patrols. Their attacks were precise, their strategy unconventional, exploiting weaknesses the Dominion had overlooked. Every strike, though small in scale, carried a message: humanity would not bow. On the colony of Tursus, hidden resistance cells cut supply lines, sabotaged communications, and coordinated attacks across sectors. Each act of defiance drew from Kane's presence. Though he remained imprisoned, his calm courage had inspired a network of resistance no Dominion officer could contain. The Dominion reacts. The warlord's fleet moved toward Sol, confident it would crush Earth and its colonies. Yet reports of unexpected losses kept coming. Supply convoys were destroyed, patrols ambushed, communications disrupted. The Dominion's commanders began to question their own plans. "Impossible," the warlord growled. "We outnumber them 10-1. Their fleets are scattered. Their defenses are weak, and yet they resist at every turn." Jorak, who had observed Kane closely, stepped forward cautiously. "My lord, they are not resisting with ships alone. They are inspired. Their courage comes from the prisoner aboard this flagship. Every colony knows his name. Every soldier fights because he did not surrender." The warlord's claws clenched. "He is just one old man." "Perhaps," Kelrith said softly, "but one man can inspire millions. One man can change the tide of war." For the first time, doubt gnawed at the warlord's mind. He had thought strength alone decided victory. Now he realized that belief, courage, and spirit were weapons the Dominion had never truly faced. Kane's calm in his cell. Kane heard the distant hum of the fleet preparing for battle. He remained calm. Chains bound his hands, energy fields held him prisoner, yet his mind was free. He pictured the human fleets, the scattered colonies, the pilots like Mara, and smiled faintly. The Dominion had captured his body, but they could not capture his spirit. Every action on the frontier, every act of resistance, every human who refused to surrender carried his influence. He whispered quietly to himself, so that only the energy field would hear: "You wanted war. You will have it." The battle begins. The Dominion approached Sol. They were met not by surrender, but by an organized defense they had not anticipated. Human ships swarmed like a living storm. Attackers struck from impossible angles, retreating before larger warships could respond. Mines hidden in asteroid belts tore through supply lines. Orbital defense stations thought destroyed opened fire from concealed positions. The Dominion's fleet faltered. Ships that had been confident of victory now faced chaos. The humans had no chance, and yet they fought as if the universe itself depended on their success. Every attack carried Kane's influence. Calm, precise, unyielding. Jorak watched in disbelief. "It cannot be," he whispered. "They are winning, even though they should not." The tide turns. The Dominion warlord roared in fury. He ordered. Massive bombardments tried to crush the humans with sheer firepower, yet every strike only strengthened their resolve. Human fleets adapted. Resistance cells repaired damaged stations faster than the Dominion could destroy them. Pilots, engineers, and soldiers, all inspired by the old captain's calm defiance, fought with relentless determination. In the heart of the flagship, Kane sat quietly. He could hear the sounds of the battle, distant but clear. The chains on his wrists were heavy, but his heart was light. Humanity's spirit was alive, unbroken, and unstoppable. Through coded signals, subtle messages, and the courage he had inspired in even a few Dominion officers, Kane had created a chain reaction. The Dominion was learning too late that they had underestimated not just one human, but the entire species. The warlord's realization. The warlord watched as his fleet suffered unprecedented losses. Ships burned, supply lines vanished, and communication networks collapsed. His officers hesitated, some defecting quietly, others openly questioning orders. "Impossible," he bellowed. "We are stronger. We are the Dominion. How can these humans resist?" Jorak stepped forward, his voice steady now. "Because you underestimated them. They are not weak. They are not fragile. They fight not for conquest, but for home, for family, for tomorrow. You cannot crush that with weapons alone." The warlord's claws trembled. His empire, built on fear and fire, was faltering. One old human had ignited a movement stronger than any fleet, stronger than any weapon. Victory. Through spirit, by the time the Dominion fleet reached orbit around Earth, the battle had changed completely. Human forces had organized a coordinated strike. Mara's fleet and others converged, hitting critical points. Supply ships were destroyed, stations fired with precision. The Dominion fleet, despite superior numbers, was forced into retreat. For every ship the Dominion destroyed, they lost two in return. For every colony they crushed, another rose in defiance. Humanity had turned its weakness into strength, its scattered forces into coordinated resistance. The warlord, watching from his command deck, could only roar in frustration. His empire had underestimated the humans, their spirit, their determination, and their refusal to surrender had become weapons far stronger than plasma cannons or fleets of warships. Kane's triumph. Though Kane remained in chains, he had already won. The Dominion had believed that capturing him would break humanity's will. Instead, his calm courage, his knowledge of survival, and his unshakable spirit had united humans across star systems. They fought not because they were forced, but because they believed, because they had hope. In his cell, Kane whispered quietly, "Now you understand what it means to challenge humanity." Jorak, who had watched from the flagship, could not look away. He had seen a single old man inspire entire worlds to rise. The Dominion had always counted on fear to control the galaxy. But fear could not touch hope, courage, or determination. Kane had proven that even one human could change the fate of millions. The Empire learns a lesson. The Dominion withdrew, battered, and humiliated. The warlord's pride was shattered. His officers had begun to question the foundations of the Empire itself. Across human space, colonies rebuilt, fleets repaired, and communication networks strengthened. Humanity had survived not because of technology alone, but because of the enduring spirit Kane had reminded them of. And everywhere, his name became legend. In the whispers of pilots, the songs of engineers, the tales told on hidden colonies, the old captain lived on, not as a prisoner but as a symbol of the strength that comes from determination, courage, and the refusal to surrender. The last word, in the silence of his cell, Kane looked out at the stars. The war had just begun in a larger sense, but the Dominion had learned its first lesson. Humanity could not be crushed, underestimated, or silenced. They would fight always, no matter the odds. He smiled faintly, chains clinking softly. For centuries, humans had faced extinction, invasion, disaster, and betrayal. And yet here, they were alive, defiant, victorious in spirit. Kane whispered one last time, not to the Dominion but to the universe itself. You wanted war. We gave it. The galaxy had learned in a single old human that humanity's courage was the greatest weapon of all. The Galactic Dominion was a name spoken with fear across the stars. It was not a single species, but a great empire made of hundreds of races, bound together by conquest and power. They ruled systems with cold hands, believing no force in the galaxy could resist them. Their fleets were endless, their technology unmatched, and their arrogance even greater. When they clashed with humanity on the outer rim of space, the Dominion expected a short campaign. Humans were young by galactic standards, their world scattered, and their fleet small. The Dominion thought Earth and its colonies would fall like dry leaves before a storm. And in many ways, the humans did lose. Planets were bombarded, stations fell, and soldiers were captured. Yet something unsettled the Dominion. The humans did not surrender easily. Among the prisoners taken during a skirmish near a mining world was an old man. His hair was gray, his skin lined with age, and his uniform bore the marks of long service. He looked fragile compared to the tall reptilian warriors or insectoid hunters who guarded him. To the Dominion, he was not dangerous. He was weak, almost laughable. His name was Captain Elias Kane. When Kane was dragged into the Dominion's flagship, the officers gathered in amusement. To them, this human was a relic, a curiosity from a lesser species. Some laughed openly, speaking in their own languages, mocking the human's bent back and slow steps. Others smirked, whispering that this was the best humanity could offer, an old soldier ready for retirement. But Kane did not look away. His eyes, though old, held a fire that made the aliens uneasy. He stood tall despite his chains and met the gaze of the Dominion warlord who sat upon a throne-like chair of polished steel and glowing crystals. The warlord was massive, a scaled creature with 4 arms and a crown of bone rising from his head. His voice echoed in the chamber as he spoke in perfect translation. "Is this what humans send to fight us? An old man? Your people must be desperate indeed." The hall erupted with laughter from the alien commanders. The sound bounced from the walls like thunder, sharp and cruel. Yet Kane remained calm. His lips curved into a faint smile, not of amusement but of certainty. The warlord leaned forward, narrowing his eyes. "You will tell us of your fleets, of your hidden colonies, of your leaders. Cooperate, and perhaps we shall let your kind, alive as slaves, refuse and your world will burn." Still Kane did not flinch. He studied the alien ruler with a steady gaze, the way a seasoned soldier studied a battlefield. His silence stretched long enough that the laughter began to fade, replaced by whispers of irritation. Finally he spoke, his voice calm but strong. "You think you know humanity. You see my age and you see weakness. You see our smaller fleets and you see defeat, but you do not understand what you face." The chamber grew quiet. Even the warlord paused, curious despite himself. Kane's chains clinked as he straightened his back. "You mistake patience for surrender. You mistake wounds for death. Humanity has faced extinction more times than you can count, and every time we rose again. You want war?" He leaned forward slightly, his eyes like steel. "We'll give you war." The words struck like a hidden blade. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence was heavy, unnatural in a hall built for arrogance. Then, as if breaking a spell, the aliens laughed again, louder, harsher, trying to bury the chill that had touched them. "Empty threats from an old prisoner," one officer shouted. "A dying race's last bark," said another. Yet some of the younger officers shifted uncomfortably. They had seen the humans fight. They had seen small ships dart into impossible maneuvers, soldiers refusing to yield even when hopeless. They remembered the colonies that resisted for months with nothing but scavenged weapons. And now this old man, bound and beaten, spoke not with fear, but with confidence. The warlord dismissed Kane with a wave of his clawed hand. "Take him away. Let him rot until his tongue loosens. He is nothing but a broken relic." The guards dragged Kane back to his cell. The laughter followed him down the halls, echoing in the cold corridors of the flagship. But Kane did not bow his head. His heart was steady. He had seen empires rise and fall. He knew arrogance when he saw it. And he knew that behind the laughter, the Dominion was afraid of something they did not yet understand. The cell was small, walls of glowing metal humming with energy fields. Kane sat on the hard surface, his hands resting calmly on his knees. He was alone but not defeated. In the silence, he thought of Earth, the blue oceans, the green forests, the countless faces of people who had never stopped fighting for survival. From the first humans who braved fire and storm to the explorers who reached the stars, the story was always the same. Struggle, endure, rise. He remembered battles long past, when he was young and planets shook with fire. He had seen comrades fall, seen cities burn, and yet humanity had endured. And now, though the Dominion believed him old and powerless, Kane carried within him the memory of all those who had fought before. That memory was sharper than any blade. Hours passed. Guards came and went, sometimes taunting him, sometimes ignoring him. But the old captain's presence unsettled them. His silence was heavier than insults, his calm gaze more dangerous than weapons. One young guard, curious and nervous, asked him once, "Why do you not fear us?" Kane looked at the alien's many eyes and answered softly, "Because fear belongs to those who doubt tomorrow. Humanity never doubts tomorrow." The guard said no more, but his steps were quicker as he left the cell. Meanwhile, the Dominion's High Council gathered aboard the flagship. Reports were brought in. Human resistance cells refusing to surrender, small fleets harassing supply lines, colonies fighting long after they should have fallen. It was an irritation, nothing more, the council said. Yet in their voices was a trace of unease. The warlord struck the table with one of his claws. "They are weak. They cannot match our fleets. They cannot match our weapons. We will crush them." But another officer muttered, "They should have broken by now." The warlord's eyes narrowed. His thoughts returned unwillingly to the words of the old human. "You want war? We'll give you war." For the first time, doubt crept into the heart of the Galactic Dominion, and far below in the silence of his cell, Captain Elias Kane closed his eyes and allowed himself a small, knowing smile. The war was only beginning. The Galactic Dominion believed it had seen everything. Across centuries of conquest, it had faced fierce warriors, cunning tricksters, and proud civilizations. All of them had fallen in the end. Some surrendered after their fleets were shattered. Others resisted until their cities turned to dust. To the Dominion, resistance was simply a delay, never a true threat. Yet the human prisoner was different. He was no young general, no brilliant scientist, no leader with power or armies. He was just one man, old, chained, and mocked. And still, his words lingered in the minds of those who had heard him. "You want war? We'll give you war." The warlord who commanded the flagship grew restless. The old man's confidence was like a thorn in his thoughts. So he ordered his intelligence officers to research everything about this Captain Elias Kane. The records, the Dominion's data archives, were vast. They reached into conquered networks, stolen satellites, and captured databases. The officers soon uncovered Kane's service record. At first they laughed again. "He has been fighting since before most of his own kind were born," one sneered. "What value does an ancient soldier have in a war of fleets and starfire?" But the more they read, the less they laughed. Kane had fought in wars before humanity had faster than light travel. He had commanded ships when reactors failed more often than they worked. He had survived battles where entire fleets were lost, yet he and his crew had returned scarred but alive. His name appeared again and again in records of desperate defenses, wars, where humanity should have been erased but somehow endured. One officer, a scholar from the avian species known as Kelrith, studied the files carefully. He spoke in a low voice. "This man is not just a soldier. He is history itself. He has seen humanity crawl through fire and rise again. He carries their memory. The warlord dismissed it at first, but doubt stirred deeper. History had taught him that symbols were often more dangerous than weapons. In the cell, meanwhile, Kane remained in his cell. The walls glowed softly, humming with the power of energy fields. The air smelled metallic, cold, lifeless. But Kane did not allow despair. He sat straight, his hands calm, his mind sharp. At times, memories came to him unbidden. He remembered the frozen battlefields of Europa, where his squad had fought for months against impossible odds. He remembered the dust storms on Mars, where entire units vanished in crimson haze, but humanity still planted its flag. He remembered the first jump into interstellar space, when fear nearly crushed the crew. But they pressed forward anyway. He remembered, too, the young faces of soldiers who had followed him. Many had fallen, yet each time new ones rose. That was humanity's gift. No matter how many fell, there were always others who carried the flame. A guard passed by, sneering at him through the energy barrier. Kane raised his head and asked calmly, "Tell me, soldier, do you know why your empire fears my people?" The guard laughed. "Fear? We do not fear you. You are weak." Kane's smile was faint. "Then why does your warlord study me so carefully?" The guard's laughter faltered. He turned and left without answering. The interrogation, the Dominion did not give up. They brought Kane before a panel of interrogators. The chamber was filled with light, and alien officers surrounded him. Their voices carried arrogance, but also hidden curiosity. "You are old," one insectoid commander hissed. "Your time is almost done. Tell us where your fleets hide. Tell us where your leaders gather." Kane met the creature's many eyes. "You think fleets win wars. You think leaders alone carry nations. But you forget the strength of people. You can crush armies, yet new ones will rise. You can burn cities, yet children will grow in the ashes." The room fell quiet. The aliens wanted to mock him again, but something in his tone made their voices die. His words were not a boast. They were truth carved from centuries of survival. The warlord slammed one claw against the table. "Empty words. Your kind cannot stand against us." Kane turned his calm gaze to him. "You see my body is old, and you laugh. But age is not weakness. Age is proof. Proof that I have faced death, again and again, and still stand before you. Can you say the same?" The warlord did not answer. The whisper of doubt outside the chamber, the younger officers spoke in hushed voices. Many of them were newly promoted, eager to prove their loyalty to the Dominion. But Kane's words dug into their thoughts like hidden seeds. One young officer from a feline race named Jorak whispered to his comrade, "I do not understand him. He has no weapons, no armies, and yet when he speaks it feels as though he commands one." His comrade scoffed, "He is a relic. Pay him no mind." But Jorak could not shake the unease. He had fought against humans before. He remembered their strange courage, how they threw themselves into hopeless battles and somehow clawed out victory. Now, seeing the old human speak with such calm certainty, Jorak began to wonder if perhaps the Dominion had underestimated them. The warlord's restlessness. That night, the warlord walked alone in his private chamber. His throne loomed empty behind him. His mind replayed the human's words again and again. "You mistake wounds for death. Humanity has faced extinction more times than you can count. And every time, we rose again." The warlord growled softly. He had built his empire on fear, on the belief that no enemy could resist the Dominion's will. But this one human, alone and aged, spoke as if the Dominion itself was already crumbling. "Why does he trouble me?" the warlord muttered to himself. He should be nothing. Yet deep inside he knew the truth. Armies could be broken, fleets destroyed, but spirit was harder to crush. And the human carried spirit like a weapon. The symbol in the days that followed, Kane became a subject of quiet discussion among the Dominion's ranks. Guards whispered of his unshakable calm. Officers debated his past campaigns. Even those who hated him could not deny that his presence was heavy. To the humans scattered across colonies and ships, news of his capture began to spread through secret channels. Some wept, thinking their old captain was gone, but others whispered with pride, "He still fights even in chains." On one hidden colony, a young pilot heard of Kane's words and clenched his fists. "If the old man can defy them in chains, then we will defy them with wings." Across the stars, sparks of defiance began to glow brighter. The turning point one evening, an alien officer entered Kane's cell. It was Jorak, the feline officer who had been troubled by doubt. He stood before the human, his tail twitching nervously. "Why, do you not fear us?" Jorak asked suddenly. His voice carried no arrogance now, only genuine curiosity. Kane looked at him for a long moment before answering. "Because fear belongs to those who think they can lose everything. Humanity knows that even if we lose today, there will be a tomorrow. We fight for that tomorrow, do you?" Jorak said nothing. He left the cell quietly, but Kane saw the flicker of conflict in his eyes. The war continues. As weeks passed, the dominions. Victories grew slower. Human resistance grew sharper, more coordinated. Small fleets used clever ambushes. Colonies refused to surrender, forcing the Dominion to waste time and resources. The Empire still won, but unease spread. And every time officers reported these struggles, the warlord remembered Kane's calm words. "You want war? We'll give you war." The old man sat in his cell, chains on his wrists, but a faint smile on his face. He could feel it even from behind walls of energy. The Dominion's laughter was fading, replaced by something else, something they had not felt in centuries. Doubt. The Galactic Dominion's war machine pressed forward across human space, but the victories no longer felt clean. Where once colonies fell in days, now they resisted for weeks. Where once supply routes were secure, now convoys vanished in ambushes. The Dominion still called it progress, still told itself that the human race was weak, yet an unease lingered, and in the center of that unease was the old human prisoner, Captain Elias Kane. A young officer's curiosity among the Dominions. Officers, one name began to surface quietly. Jorak, the feline warrior who had once questioned Kane in his cell. Jorak was young compared to the older commanders, but he had already seen the humans fight. He remembered a small skirmish on the edge of a mining colony where human ships, outnumbered 3-1, fought until the last. Even when their hulls burned, they rammed into Dominion cruisers with desperate courage. Jorak found himself unable to forget Kane's words. Humanity never doubts tomorrow. One night, against orders, Jorak returned to the human cell. The corridor was quiet, the guards weary and uninterested. The energy field hummed faintly as he stepped closer. "You," Jorak said softly. "Old soldier, tell me something. Why do your kind fight when all logic says you should surrender? Our fleets are stronger. Our weapons cut through your ships. Why do you resist?" Kane looked up from where he sat on the hard bench. His eyes were tired but steady. He spoke slowly as though weighing each word. "Because surrender is death of the spirit. We are not machines. We are not beasts who bend because claws are sharper. We are human. To live means to fight, even when the odds are against us." Jorak tilted his head, ears twitching. "But is that not foolish? To fight when you cannot win?" Kane's smile was faint. "Perhaps, but sometimes what seems foolish becomes victory. Do you think we survived on a dangerous world for so long because we were wise? No, we survived because we refused to stop no matter the cost." Jorak said nothing for a long moment. Then, almost against his own will, he asked, "Tell me a story of your people's wars. Stories of struggle." And so Kane told him. He spoke of the ancient wars of Earth, when humanity had no ships, no plasma weapons, not even the stars. He spoke of armies that marched with nothing but courage and will, facing enemies stronger than themselves. He described cities destroyed, rebuilt, and destroyed again, yet still people endured. Then he told stories of the early days of space, of the frozen outposts on Europa, where soldiers fought not only each other but storms and hunger, of Mars, where dust storms swallowed armies but colonists planted new seeds after the storms cleared. You see, Kane said, his voice steady, every time the world tried to break us, we learned. We grew harder. We found new ways to rise. That is our nature. Jorak listened in silence, his tail still. For the first time, he wondered if perhaps the Dominion had misjudged this species. Humans might be fragile in body, but in spirit, they were something else. Whispers among the guards, it was not only Jorak. Other guards began to notice Kane as well. They watched him sit in silence, unbroken by threats or taunts. Some swore his presence alone felt heavy, as though he carried invisible armies with him. One insectoid guard asked him mockingly, "Do you dream of freedom, human?" Kane looked at the alien calmly. "I dream of tomorrow, for tomorrow always belongs to us." The guard scoffed, but later repeated the words quietly to himself, unsettled. Soon whispers spread among the crew. They spoke of the old man who showed no fear, who carried centuries of war in his eyes. Some laughed to push away their unease, but others felt something they did not want to admit: respect. The Dominion's growing unease. The warlord, however, was not blind. He heard of these whispers and grew angry. The human was supposed to be broken, a symbol of weakness. Instead, he was becoming a symbol of strength. In a meeting with his commanders, the warlord struck the table with a clawed fist. "This old man is nothing, yet you let him poison your minds with words. Words!" But one commander, the avian Kelrith, scholar, spoke carefully. "Perhaps it is not only words, my lord. Perhaps it is the truth. This man is a living reminder of his people's endurance. We cannot ignore the effect he has." The warlord glared at him. "Truth? There is no truth but strength, and strength belongs to the Dominion." Yet his own voice lacked the thunder it once held. Even he could not silence the memory of Kane's words. A message beyond walls unbeknownst. To the Dominion, Kane's words were already reaching further than the flagship. Some of the younger officers, like Jorak, carried his stories in their hearts. And when they spoke to others, even in whispers, the stories spread. Through hidden human networks, rumors of Kane's defiance also escaped. Smugglers and prisoners carried tales. The old captain is alive, he does not bow, he speaks of victory even in chains. On a mining colony deep in the frontier, workers repeated those words and lifted their tools as weapons. On a hidden shipyard, engineers painted Kane's name on the side of a new vessel. Across scattered human settlements, his calm defiance became a spark. The Dominion wanted him to be forgotten. Instead, he was becoming a legend. The seeds of rebellion. One evening, Jorak returned again. This time he asked, not with curiosity, but with something else, longing. "Captain," he said softly, almost respectfully, Do you believe even we could rise against the Dominion?" Kane studied him. "You are not human. Your kind has served the Dominion for generations." Jorak lowered his eyes. "Yes, but we serve because we fear. We obey because we are told there is no other way. And yet, when you speak, I wonder if perhaps there is." Kane leaned forward, his voice firm. "Every empire believes it is eternal. Every tyrant believes fear will hold forever. But nothing lasts. Someday, the Dominion will fall. The only question is who will stand when it does." The words struck Jorak like lightning. For the first time, he saw the empire not as unshakable stone, but as a tower that could one day crumble. The warlord's dilemma news of growing human resistance reached the flagship again. Colonies once thought broken rose in sudden defiance. Fleets too small to matter struck with precision, disrupting supply chains. The warlord roared in frustration. "Why will they not break?" Kelrith answered carefully. "Because they believe. And belief is a weapon even stronger than fleets." The warlord's eyes burned. He thought of Kane's calm smile, his quiet confidence. He realized with fury that the old man had done this, not with guns, but with words. He considered executing Kane to silence him, but another thought gnawed at him. If he killed the old man, would that not make him a martyr? Would his words not echo even louder in death? For the first time in his reign, the warlord hesitated. The spark catches flame. In the silence of his cell, Kane closed his eyes. He could not see beyond the walls, but he felt it. He felt the shift in the air, the tremor in the Dominion's confidence. His words had begun as whispers, but now they moved like fire, leaping from soldier to soldier, from human to alien. The Dominion had mocked him as a relic, a broken prisoner. But he knew the truth. He was a spark, and sparks, given time, could set fire to empires. The Galactic Dominion had believed it was untouchable. Its fleets spanned star systems, its weapons unmatched, and its armies countless. Yet in the shadows of conquered worlds, a different story was emerging. A story that did not belong to the Dominion but to humanity. It began quietly. Colonies that were thought lost began to signal back. Small ships, long abandoned, appeared in orbit with repaired weapons and crews who refused to surrender. Supply convoys were ambushed. Outposts once thought broken rebuilt themselves overnight. And at the heart of it all, in chains aboard the Dominion flagship, sat Captain Elias Kane. The old captain's reach, Kane could not move freely. He could not command fleets. He could not even speak to the humans scattered across the stars. Yet his influence stretched further than the Dominion could imagine. Every whisper he had shared with curious officers like Jorak, every story of humanity's past struggles, had been carried quietly to others. Some officers told others. Some guards repeated his words to each other. Some even hesitated when they saw a human colony, questioning whether the Dominion's victory was inevitable. Kane knew the power of belief. Humans thrived on it, feeding off hope, courage, and unity. And he realized that even the Dominion soldiers could be influenced, if they allowed doubt to enter their hearts. He sat in his cell and closed his eyes. In his mind, he saw fleets of humans rallying, colonies sending aid to one another, ships moving silently through Dominion lines. He smiled faintly. The war was no longer just about survival. It was about awakening. Rising resistance on the mining colony of Varel. A young pilot named Mara listened to the stories of Kane's courage. Her ship had been patched together with scavenged parts, and her crew was small, but determination burned bright. "We have to fight," Mara said to her crew. "The old captain is chained, but he is alive. He has not given up. And neither will we." Her crew nodded. Together they repaired engines, sharpened weapons, and studied Dominion patrol routes. They moved in silence, striking where least expected. Dominion commanders called it chaos. Mara called it justice. Elsewhere, on a hidden shipyard near the moon of Tursus, engineers painted Kane's name on the hull of a newly built frigate. "For the old captain," they whispered. "For humanity." Even small acts became symbols. Every resistance cell carried a piece of Kane's courage. Every victory, no matter how minor, was a message. Humanity would not yield. Doubt among Dominion officers. The Dominion's arrogance began to crack. Reports came of unexpected losses. Supplies vanished. Fleets were delayed. And through all of it, the warlord's thoughts returned to Kane. "He is just one old human," the warlord barked to his commanders. "He cannot possibly change the outcome." But officers whispered among themselves. Jorak, once a loyal soldier, now hesitated before giving orders. He remembered Kane's words, "Even if we lose today, there will be a tomorrow." Kelrith, the avian scholar, noted in reports that morale among human populations was increasing despite the Dominion's assaults. "It is as though they draw strength from one person," he said quietly. "A spark, a symbol." The warlord slammed, his claw on the table. "Symbols mean nothing. Only power matters." Yet power alone could not explain the growing defiance, the endless repairs, the sudden ambushes. Doubt, subtle but persistent, began to seep into even the most loyal ranks. Kane's subtle influence, Kane's days in the cell were long. Guards brought food and water, sometimes sneering, sometimes silent. They watched him, curious despite themselves. One guard, an insectoid named Rith, lingered by the energy barrier. "You are old," he said finally. "You cannot fight." Why do you speak as though you can? Kane's eyes, calm and piercing, met his. I fight with what I have. You do the same, every day. Strength is not just in weapons, it is in resolve. Rith blinked, unsure. Kane's calm confidence was unsettling. Slowly, he began to realize that the human's power lay not in muscle or firepower, but in the certainty of his spirit. Even those sworn to the Dominion could not fully dismiss Kane. He became more than a prisoner. He was a teacher, a spark, a symbol that refused to die. The spark spreads across human space. Stories of Kane's calm defiance spread. Colonies that had once surrendered quietly began to resist. Small fleets coordinated through secret channels. Engineers repaired ships that were months away from being scrapped. Scouts reported Dominion patrols and found new ways to evade them. In the silence of orbit, Mara's squadron attacked a Dominion convoy. They struck with precision, striking supply ships and retreating before the larger warships could respond. The Dominion called it reckless and chaotic. Humans called it courage and ingenuity. Every small victory inspired another. Every whispered tale of Kane's presence reminded humans that resistance was not only possible, it was inevitable. The warlord's fear. The warlord paced his command deck, claws clicking on the metal floor. Reports from the front lines were growing worse. Colonies that should have been conquered months ago still sent signals. Supply lines were broken repeatedly. Human fleets moved with unexpected cunning. Why do they fight so hard? He demanded of his commanders. We outnumber them 10-1, our fleets are superior, why do they not surrender? Jorak, who had quietly become one of the few officers to observe Kane personally, spoke hesitantly. Perhaps it is not our strength they fear, but our certainty. They see us as invincible, and yet the old man, he has made them believe that even an old soldier can stand against us. The warlord growled low in his throat. Impossible. One human cannot inspire millions. But in the quiet of his mind, the warlord knew better. Symbols could ignite more than fleets. Kane's calm, unbroken presence was creating cracks, small ones, but they were cracks nonetheless. The human symbol Kane did not speak directly to humans. He could not send messages across star systems. Yet every word, every story told to curious Dominion officers became a message. A young engineer on Earth's outer colony heard of Kane's calm in chains. She whispered to her friends, "If he does not give up, neither will we. If he can face them without fear, we can face them in space." On a transport vessel near Titan, a pilot who had once considered surrender now plotted attacks on Dominion supply ships. For Kane, she said softly, for humanity. Even the smallest acts of resistance became symbols of hope. And hope, once kindled, spread faster than any fleet could move. The Dominion begins to falter as months passed. The Dominion began to realize that victory was no longer certain. They still had superior fleets. They still had powerful weapons. But their soldiers hesitated. Their commanders questioned orders. Doubt festered quietly, like a disease that could not be cured by might alone. The warlord realized that Kane, a single old human chained aboard his flagship, had begun to undo the Dominion's confidence. He called for a council meeting. "I want this human silenced," he growled. "If his words are spreading, if his presence inspires even a fraction of our enemies, then we must act. He is more dangerous than any fleet, more cunning than any general. He must be stopped." But even as he spoke, some officers hesitated. To strike Kane directly risked making him a martyr. To ignore him allowed his influence to grow. For the first time, the warlord felt uncertainty. The spark of war Kane sat quietly in his cell, chains clinking softly. He could not see the fleets, could not command the humans in person, but he could feel the awakening. He remembered Earth's history, when small sparks had started revolutions, when the weak had risen against the mighty. He remembered the lessons of survival, ingenuity, courage, unity. And he smiled faintly. The Dominion might have the stars, the fleets, and the firepower, but humanity had something stronger, a spirit that could not be broken, and a spark that could ignite across the galaxy. He whispered to himself softly, so that only the energy fields could carry his words. It has begun. The spark of resistance was now aflame. And soon, the Dominion would discover that they had not captured a frail old man. They had captured the very heart of humanity's fury.